Hey there folks, my name is Stephen, and if you're anything like me, you probably feel that the real estate content game is getting a little bit boring. Which brings us to today, where we're going to meet one of BC's biggest and baddest realtors as they show us around the neighbourhood that they love and share some secrets about how to get on the property market in 2022. So join us for some great transitions, questionable music choices, and some C+ comedy at best. It's time for Realtors. Today, we'll be joined by the formidable Adina Dragasanu as she takes us down the historic Cambie Street, showing off a mixture of old and new houses along the way. And we're about to embark on a journey to one of Adina's favourite spots in the city, the Seawall, located right by the Cambie Bridge. This is where we'll be stopping to learn a bit more about Adina's life as a real estate agent. After taking in the breathtaking views and breathing in the fresh sea air, we'll be ending our tour in Yaletown, where Adina will be showing me one of her listings that's perfect for first-time buyers. It's like a match made in heaven, with a stunning view thrown in for good measure.
Okay, Stephen. Today, I'm gonna take you to shoot some video around Cambie Street in Vancouver. This is my favorite neighborhood. It's actually a mixture of different neighborhoods. So we're gonna cover Cambie Street all the way up from King Edward, which is where we're starting now. And we'll work our way down. I'll show you some of the different housing types around here and some of the awesome features about the neighborhood. What's awesome about this neighborhood, you've got a great mix of housing. A lot of the housing here was built in the 1930s. Some that was renovated throughout the years, now, almost a century later. You also have some new construction. I personally love a lot of these older homes that have been updated. Here's actually one that we sold recently, and it was one of my favorite homes around here. It was built in 1937. The owners that had purchased this in 1979 for $72,000. We just sold it for over $2.5 million.
So she's feeling pretty happy right now.
She's feeling pretty happy.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, actually the biggest lesson about real estate is that when she sold it, say you walk away with $2.5 million, have you made that money? Not really, because if you want to stay in the neighborhood, right, it's going to cost you that much to stay in it. But by, purchasing what she did, you're able to keep up with the market. So a few blocks east of us, we'd be on the east side of Vancouver. Right now we're on the west side of Vancouver. Cool. We're in a pretty pricey neighborhood, right? Like land value in this neighborhood right now, you'd be about 2.3 to 2.4, 2.5 million.
It's a casual, 30, 50 years of earnings there.
Which is why I want to take you to see some other housing types, right? So for a lot of people our age now trying to get into the market, it's not realistic to jump right into the detached market. As we go down Cambie, there's a variety of different housing types and where it becomes more and more achievable for younger people to get in the market.
So all these houses were kind of 1930s-esque kind of vibe.
I think there's some maybe in the 20s even, and some in the 40s, right? Some, as you see, like these would be built in like the 90s. A lot of the older ones were, quite a bit smaller, and then they've either been lifted up or people have added another floor. Like this in February would have sold for 2.9 million. So a few of the cool things about this neighborhood, like you said, you're not super familiar with it. We have Queen Elizabeth Park right behind us. Apparently, Queen Elizabeth Park used to be an open pit mine.
Because you do the Instagram Did You Know things.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know, if you follow Adina on Instagram, every now and again she'll have like quizzes about areas in Vancouver. And I've gotten too invested in them where I get so angry at myself when I get them wrong. I'm just there like on the phone like, oh no!
What we're gonna go see right now is some of the homes in this area between 16th and Broadway. You have a lot of really beautiful older homes that were purchased usually in the 80s or 90s, and they were stratified. So one big house was turned into 3 or 4 units. So stratified is actually a very important thing to know. It is basically when you're taking a piece of land and you subdivide it into 2 or more owners. So whether you're taking a piece of land and you make a duplex, right, or you put 4 units in a house, or you build 300 units, it's all stratified property. So what's really cool about this neighborhood, and I love, is that the detached market's not super affordable for a lot of young people and older people. So this, like I said, these are a lot of older homes that were built and around that same era in the 1930s. They were much bigger homes. And like I said, they were purchased and stratified. This is a really cool one here. One of our clients recently bought into this. This was actually the old mayor's house.
The old mayor of Vancouver?
Yeah, it's a heritage designation.
That's so cool.
And there's actually, I believe there's 8 units between these 2 buildings, and then there's a coach house in the back. So for a 2-bedroom around here, you might be between 1.2 to 1.5 million.
So we've dropped You've come by like 10 streets down?
Yeah.
And
So
we've dropped nearly
21st,
a million.
dropped a million, but you're only owning 2 bedrooms as part of a
course.
bigger house.
That's, yeah.
Right? So the value of the whole house would actually be more expensive
Yeah.
here. I feel like this is a driving test. I'm going down roundabout. This is generally like my favorite little area of the city.
That's so cool.
Isn't it cute?
I think I always have this hang up of not being in like downtown core. Like I've lived in LA, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Dublin, in Ireland. And I always want to be in the centre. But then when I come out of the centre, I'm like, oh, that's actually very nice out here.
And I would argue that Cambie's actually in some ways even more central than downtown. The one challenge as we go down, we'll see there's more condo buildings, but around here, we're starting to get into the Fairview neighborhood, which does have condo buildings, but they're a little bit older. A lot of them built in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and a lot of them have rental restrictions.
Oh.
So there's actually not a ton of rental options in this area.
So when people are looking for a place in Fairview, the actual number of places they can possibly get is much less.
Fewer than downtown, yeah. So this is City Hall right here.
This is where we thought we were going to have the centre of Vancouver. They were like, this is where it's going to be.
Yes. And one of the beautiful things about what I love about the Cambie Street Bridge, similar to the Granville Street Bridge, but you have view corridors. So the city has really maintained a focus on balancing nature and, development in the city. So they've restricted building heights to the point that we can still see the North Shore Mountains as we're driving down Cambie Street. So we're in Fairview now, right? Where you'd be afraid of being across the bridge, but you have everything you need a block away. You have the SkyTree in there, and then I'm going to take you guys to my favorite part of this neighborhood, which is, we won't tell you, I guess.
We won't tell, we'll show them.
We'll go.
In 3, 2, 1,
go.
So this is your favourite place in Vancouver?
Absolute favorite place in Vancouver. Mind you, I love all of Vancouver. I don't know if you know, but I had always dreamed of moving to Vancouver since I was, we don't know how old, but in my early teens. But what I love about it is that it's so quiet here, right? And on just to the east of us, we have Olympic Village. If we want to walk west, we could go to Granville Island. So there's some kind of busier hubs that we can go to.
And talk to me a little bit about you wanting to be a realtor.
I always want to do something in business. I always love people. My parents thought I'd want to be a lawyer because I love to talk a lot. And it was really when I came out here to go to university, I remember, I think many times I'd look at it downtown, but one time just driving on the bus, right down the Granville Street Bridge and looking at the condos and thinking someone's helping people move into those homes. Like, it just seemed like such a cool idea to me. So I called my parents and I was like, I think I'm going to major in real estate, because I had the option to major in real estate or marketing or finance. And they said, no way. So they said, we didn't send you to school to be a realtor. But when I started, I actually started working for a guy who sold luxury recreational properties. So multi-million-dollar ranches and waterfront properties, very glamorous. But it was the financial crash.
So you got in at just the right time.
Just the right time where I got in. And it was kind of a weird setup too, because I wasn't getting a salary. I was getting a cut of his commission, which some years could be very big, some years not so big. Well, he sold almost nothing the first year I was there. So I worked for a full year.
For nothing?
Yeah. That was another way of how I actually ended up getting into residential real estate, because they said, well, you have your license, go sell.
They were like, oh, well, go do it.
Yeah.
Make your own money.
Honestly, I think as soon as I started doing it, it was the first job I ever had that I never looked at someone else's job and was envious of them, because I knew I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing.
Like, what do you think some of the appeals of a place like Vancouver is?
Everywhere I've traveled in the world, I still have never found a city I love as much as this, from the fact that you're on the ocean, you have the mountains that are accessible, you have all the conveniences of a city, right? But you still have that balance with nature and that connection with nature and the accessibility. Not only can we access the mountains, but our water comes from the mountains, right?
Yes.
Like, I always think of how many cities do we travel to where you could actually drink the tap water.
Yeah.
Never mind get water that's coming from a mountain reservoir. So I was originally born in Romania, a very different world. It was communist at the time I was born. Then there was a revolution when I was about 3. My parents moved us to Canada when I was 6. I found out much later on in my life that my grandpa was actually a real estate agent in Romania.
Oh, no way. So it's in the blood.
Right? I think I didn't fully know it, but I think I always had it a little bit in my blood to do it.
So Adina, one of the places that you lived in first after university was downtown Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I believe that's where you're taking us today.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you to Yale Town. That was actually my first place I lived in after university. Once I moved downtown and discovered the seawall, there was no turning back. The other reason I want to take you guys downtown is because I think Condo ownership is one of the best ways for young people to get into the market. And we see a lot of our clients start buying properties either downtown or here in Fairview, Mount Pleasant, Olympic Village, but that's usually the starting point for a lot of people. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to show you some of the things that I always tell people to look for in places when they're buying their first place.
Nice, and maybe I'll walk out of here with an actual home of my own.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
I brought the contract, let's go. So we're on the other side of the water now. We're in Yaletown on Richard Street. And since we're talking a lot about condos and getting into the market, I thought it'd be interesting for us to go up, take a look at a condo and talk about what makes a great first purchase for a lot of buyers.
Let's go see it.
Let's go. So let's talk about the most important things that I think buyers need to think about when they're buying a condo. Number one, it's all about lifestyle when you're buying a condo, so location is always top priority.
And this location is sublime.
Pretty hard to get better than this. Number two, building is super important. When you bought a strata property, you own a piece of a larger building. So you really need to do your homework and make sure it's a well-built building and see what kind of work is coming up. There's always age-related maintenance, right? So when we get to buildings over 20 years old, there's typically work that needs to be done like roofs and windows and balconies. So you really need to do your homework on that. And number three, I think layout and functionality of the space is really important. So that's something I think we could walk around and show you here. This is a very interesting place. This is in the Mondrian building downtown. It was very avant-garde for its time in the early 2000s. And I think a really important thing for millennial buyers, we were talking earlier about places, is having functional spaces, right? So what's really interesting with this place, this is 2 bedrooms, but it has 2 separate den spaces. And what's great about that, as you know, a lot of people now are working from home. People want the flexibility that if they have a kid, where would they put a kid, right? And it's not always feasible that you might be able to move up the property ladder that fast. Like this place, for example, has a bedroom, but then has a den space next to it. Gives you that functionality of a multi-purpose space. And then the master bedroom over there is on the other side.
Let's say hypothetically you did have a kid and you were like, okay, I don't need to move right now. Kid can go here. You could have an office or something right here.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden you're in the master bedroom right here.
Exactly. What's great about it, like we talked earlier, I think the best strategy in real estate is holding as long as possible. So if you can buy something that has functional space that you could grow into, it allows you to stay in the market for much longer. Another really important thing to look for if you're buying a condo in a smaller space is storage. The more you could put away, the bigger your space will feel. For example, if you had like a walk-in closet, this is a luxury these days.
Oh, wow, okay. I mean, there's literally bedrooms that are smaller than this that people are living in.
That's very true,
That's wild.
I guess you could think of it as a 5-bedroom, really, if you count that.
What should people look out for? What are the kind of like, hey, be wary of this, you know, knock on this wall, like, give this a kick. What do they need to be aware of when they are going down the street of their first purchase?
Well, certainly number one is the building, right? And reading all the building documents. You'll want to read the last 2 years of strata council meetings. You'll want to see the depreciation report. You'll want to check their financials and see how they're operating and how they're planning for upgrades and expenses for the building, number one. Number two, within the place itself, I think what you want to look for is easy fixes like flooring and paint and, you know, maybe appliances. Those are good things.
So Adina, any final tips, tricks, or words of wisdoms for our viewers before we leave today?
Well, I think the most important thing, we've already talked about it today, but it's that real estate is really a long-term game. And I think you need to have a long-term strategy and a long-term outlook. So if you're looking to get into the market or work your way up in the market, I think it's important to look ahead. You want to look 5, 10, if you can, 20 years ahead, where you want to be and start working your way, you know, making that decision based on what's going to help you get there. And I see a lot of buyers getting very discouraged because they can't afford a house in the city, like you were talking about, right?
The 3-bedroom detached house in the city might be a little bit out of my price point right now.
Right now.
Right.
But what might be good is, if that's your end goal, is figuring out how you can get there over time. So I think in order to do that too, you really want to make sure that you're working with professionals who are looking out for your best interest. I think it's so important to have a great team of, you want to have a great agent, a great lender, a great inspector, and if you have parents or someone involved who's bought before, they always have great opinions too. So I actually think it's great to get them involved.
I think after all of this today, that I'm about ready to go sign for this place.
Great, I got a contract for you. Let's
go. As the sun set over the city, I couldn't help thinking about the houses that we saw today and the role that they played in the story of Vancouver. You see, real estate in this city can paint a picture. Whether it be a failed plan to decentralize the city centre, or the genius idea of protecting the view corridors, it all makes up the ongoing tale of Vancouver. But the tale that impressed me most of all today was Adina's. How she committed to something she was so passionate about, stuck it out even when it was tough, and grew from mere mortal to the real estate powerhouse that we saw today. And while I didn't put ink to paper on today's outing, I know that when the time comes to buy my first property in Vancouver, I'll be making sure I have Adina on speed dial.